Welcome everyone out there across the metal world. This is Metallic Musings number 4, and I'm Rob's Metalworks, and I'm greatly anticipating speaking to you tonight about a DVD called Murder in the Front Row. And yes, many of you guys know about this thrash metal documentary. The DVD's been out now for a couple of years, and believe it or not, throughout this entire time, I've been wanting to talk about it because there's so many things that are cool and unique about this DVD. Now, before we get into the DVD, though, we have to talk about the premise of why this DVD was made and how it was created. So first and foremost, we all know about Murder in the Front Row, the book. And for many of you guys out there who don't yet have it, go ahead and take a look at it. This is it right here. Nice, a beautiful hard copy. Tons of beautiful pictures focusing on the birth of thrash metal in the San Francisco Bay Area. And thank you so much to photographers Brian Liu and Harold Oyman, also known as Haroldo, for documenting and sharing their love and passion for thrash metal back at that time in the early 80s. And they continued to do so and document and became friendships and were part of a beautiful scene that was becoming and blossoming into something historic, unbeknownst to them. And we're going to talk more about that later. But yeah, the book came out very successful. I think they've done like 3 or 4 printings now across the world because people obviously became enamored with thrash metal because, of course, Metallica and Exodus and Megadeth and Slayer and all the great bands that came out and started really a huge following in the Bay Area. So because of the success of the book, director Adam Dubin decided to create a documentary. And what a beautiful thing it was for all of us fans who wanted to not only see the photos, but hear from the musicians themselves. Not only the first generation musicians, but the second and third generation of thrash that came out of the Bay Area. So this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. This is Murder in the Front Row, the documentary. And guys, if you are a lover of thrash metal like I am, you have to have this DVD in your hands. Again, it's a very unique piece of work that focuses not on thrash metal as a whole, because of course after the success of Metallica, we saw thrash bands and other genres of metal popping up all over the country. But what I love about Murder in the Front Row is that it focuses on the Bay Area scene and the beginning of the Bay Area scene, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. Some of you who follow me on social media heard me kind of mention that Murder in the Front Row was not the first documentary on thrash metal. Of course, we've talked about Get Thrashed, the documentary created by Rick Ernst back in 2007, and we were huge supporters of that DVD as well. And if you want some more insight on that, go ahead and look at the post that I put up on our Facebook page regarding Get Thrash and Rick Ernst. And you can also watch our video interview with the man at that time. Now, guys, as we jump into this DVD, trust me, I'm not going to rehash everything that you're going to find in the DVD because I want you to watch it yourselves. But there are some key things that I think are quite important to note. First and foremost, I love how they open the DVD with my man, Kirk Hammett. And one of the things that you'll see throughout the DVD, because he pops up many times, and he should pop up many times because Kirk was part of the original house thrash band in San Francisco. We know that band is Exodus. And he also went on to join Metallica, but more so what you're going to hear about in this video is that he influenced a lot of the people, a lot of his peers in the metal scene as well. Some of these became famous musicians like Gary Holt and Tom Hunting, and some of them were just other musicians in the scene and fans. But I love how he opens it up by saying, "Posers must die." Yes, that is a quote from the famous Paul Bailoff, of who we're going to talk about more here in a little bit. But you'll see at the beginning they have many big names in this video who will kind of chime in here and there when they talk about different things of the San Francisco Bay scene. People like Alex Skolnick and Marco Segueda, Phil Demo, and a very notable name that was not in the Get Thrashed DVD, and that was Rob Flynn. So happy to see Flynn in this video. Then we have people like Tom Araya and Trujillo, James Hetfield, and then the arrogant ass Kerry King, who didn't want to say his name, but you know, that's him. But very cool, lots of great names in this DVD. And also what was cool is that Adam included not only famous people, but just people, fans who were part of the scene at that time, who hung out at Ruthie's Inn, who partied with the bands, and also who were an intricate part in promoting this metal, not only in their local scene in San Francisco, but across the world and the country through tape trading. And one of the people that was very, very surprising to see in this video that I've never seen comment on Metallica or the Bay or her man Cliff Burton was Corinne Lynn. Yes, many of you guys know that she was Cliff Burton's girlfriend for many, many years. I'd never seen her comment on his passing, but it was a beautiful thing to see. I'm glad that they caught her and got her on video. Now, one of the things that is cool about this video is because the San Francisco Bay Area scene kind of really birthed from Metallica, and then what Metallica started at that time, really kind of influencing Exodus. Even though they were doing similar heaviness, it wasn't really quite as cutting edge as Metallica. You'll see that throughout the DVD, they go in and out of talking about Metallica and many of the different things that they did. Kind of really not focusing on, of course, New York thrash or Florida thrash or Chicago thrash. Again, focusing on the San Francisco Bay Area. And one of the first things that you're going to hear them talk about is how Brian Slagle out of LA. Now remember, guys, Metallica was from LA. Then they went to San Francisco to play a gig for Brian Slagle, the owner of Metal Blade Records, and that's how it started off. And I've heard Kirk Hammett say in other interviews that that he's done, and I'm adamantly agree with him, is that thrash metal did not begin in LA, even though Metallica was from LA. The thrash metal movement began in San Francisco, and Metallica went up there and was embraced by their scene, and that's the birth of thrash metal. So great things. They talk about, of course, the reason the band moved up there, and that was to have Cliff Burton join the band. And, you know, I can't stop talking about really some of the candidness and really the honesty and integrity in this video. And it really took fans to bring that out of fans and musicians who were part of that scene in that time. And one of the things I love about this video is that it's not so formal, especially with people like Kirk Hammett, who's of course worldwide and very famous. You'll see him in some other interviews be very formal when he's speaking to, you know, Rolling Stone or some other magazine. But in this interview, I mean, you hear him say posers must die, and then he candidly talks about so many things. You know, he talks about his personality and that he was afraid that it might not jive with the band dynamics of Metallica and really what they were doing. So it was really heartfelt. It was a really underground type of persona that he was giving us. And a lot of the personalities in this interview, in their interviews, did the same. Now, one of the pieces that they kind of dive, when they dive out of Metallica, is they talk about Ruthie's Inn. And really, I wasn't aware of Ruthie's Inn until much later when I became involved with thrash metal. And you have to now just recall, for some of you, you know, I'm an old schooler. I'm a first generation thrash fan. I remember when Master of Puppets came out, I was about 16 years old, 15 years old. And then, you know, we were jamming Ride the Lightning in middle school. So in the very beginnings, you know, as before, now remember, this was before the internet, as news kind of circulated in magazines and in tape trading, getting around to Texas, you know, that's when I kind of became familiar with what was happening in the Bay. But Ruthie's Inn became such a central point, and they spent a lot of time in the video talking about the Ruthie's Inn and kind of it being their home base for the thrash scene. And the owner, Wes Robinson, how he embraced the thrash scene, and all these young white suburban kids from all sides of the Bay were there thrashing. And it was kind of weird because he was an African American who was focused on blues, but yet kind of helped birth the thrash scene in the Bay Area. In the DVD, they also talk about how Slayer went up there to the Bay Area and was also very embraced. And one of the cool stories that I love about Slayer in this DVD is how the Bay Area, if you guys look at the old Slayer records, you see the guys had like eyeliner on, and it was funny because you heard people in the video talk about how fans were telling them, especially the Exodus guys were telling them, you can't wear makeup, man, in the Bay Area because you're going to get hammered for it. That shit doesn't fly up here. And that's how Slayer did away with the eyeliner. And that was a really cool story. I had never heard that story before. They first went up there to the Bay in early of '84 and kind of also made some headways and were embraced by the fans. And that's also how Slayer kind of built their fan base too. They talk about a very famous event called Day on the Dirt, which was put on by Russ Robinson of Ruthie's Inn. And really they talk about, Harold O especially and Brian Liu talk about how really that was their Day on the Green, and of course Day on the Green is a huge San Francisco Bay Area event. And it was a really underground version of that with Slayer and Exodus and Suicidal and Possessed. All different types of genres, especially Suicidal, who was more of a crossover, and then you had Possessed doing their black metal. But really, at that time, it broke boundaries, allowing fans and musicians from different genres to come together and have a lot of camaraderie. And I think that was the takeaway from that segment. They also talk about Megadeth and how when Dave came back, he didn't go back to LA. Remember, Dave Mustaine was from LA. He didn't go back to LA. He went back to San Francisco, started Megadeth, did their first show, Megadeth shows in San Francisco. And you'll see in the video, it's quite interesting to see that Kerry King, who was already in Slayer at that time, doing shows with Dave Mustaine and Megadeth. You'll see them again come back out and talk about Metallica once again in the release of Kill 'Em All. And remember, Kill 'Em All came out in the summer of '83. Amazing, amazing record. Of course, we all know it and love it. And then shortly thereafter, we had the release of Bonded by Blood. All my young kids out there, remember, this is the record that is the epitome of San Francisco Bay Area thrash. As you can see, I have my copy here, my vinyl autograph by all the original members. I caught up with them and in Austin many years ago. And great. They were still crazy and wild at that time. And I remember we were on the bus partying a little bit. But they also take that time when they talk about Bonded by Blood to also mention, of course, the legend, Mr. Paul Bailoff. And some of you guys may have seen my interview with Paul Bailoff that I posted on Friday. I was glad and happy and thankful to have had the opportunity to meet Paul. I remember at that time, I could already tell that his health was not good. He looked a lot older than he actually was. But, back then, I think it was 1998 or 99. My video equipment wasn't as up to par as it is now. So the video quality wasn't that great. But nonetheless, we got it on tape. And yes, he passed away in 2002. Now, one of the things, too, that I want to talk about is that when they mention Paul Bailoff, they have a scene in the video where Gary Holt and Tom Hunting are visiting his grave. And it's a really, really emotional moment in the doc because you hear Gary, especially Gary, reminiscing about the greatness of Paul Bailoff. Now, if you remember, Paul Bailoff only did one record with the band. He did Bonded by Blood, and he recorded it twice. And then, of course, they asked him to leave the band because Paul was pretty crazy and a wild guy. And at that time, Exodus really wanted to progress with their career and do great things. Was that a mistake? We don't know. We'll never know. I wish he would have stayed and done another record. But nonetheless, when he passed in 2002, you hear Gary talk about how him and the other guitarist Rick Hunolt lowered him into the grave, and then you see kind of Gary get teary-eyed. And those are the kind of moments that people who work in video like me that we try to capture when we meet artists, So it was really cool to have, Adam capture that, because it shows how deeply Gary loved Paul Bailoff and how much he misses him. So great tribute to the man. Hope all my people out there are enjoying Metallic Musings number 4 as we talk about Murder in the Front Row, the DVD. And yes, you've heard me kind of rehash some important parts of the DVD that I found were really interesting and unique to Murder in the Front Row, the DVD. And again, they kind of circle back to Corrine Lynn, who was the longtime girlfriend of Cliff Burton. And they talk about, of course, the bus accident in 1986 where Cliff passed, and she kind of really also shares a lot about their relationship and where they were going in their relationship, really kind of moving towards the path of living together and probably marriage. So it was a serious thing she talks about, and she reminisces about how Cliff was very happy about that time and how he was playing guitar all the time and really just wanted to be on the road all the time, even though he was going to be away from her, which was quite ironic. But she loved the man so much that she always wanted him to be happy and to do the things that he wanted to do with music. And again, seeing Corrine Lynn in this video kind of blew my mind because she doesn't do press. I've never seen her talk about or read about her talking about Cliff Burton. So that made this DVD so huge. So I was so thankful for them to get her in the video. They talk about too the birth and all these guys, these second gen thrash bands like Forbidden and Death Angel and Testament and even Machine Head, who were kind of influenced by the success. Once we started seeing the success of Exodus and Megadeth and Slayer and of course Metallica out of the Bay, it influenced so many of these guys to go out there and pick up instruments and do it themselves and really kind of root these in. Was like the passage gate to get successful in thrash metal. So it was cool to kind of hear about that. Another unique thing about this DVD is they talk about a band manager at that time whose name was Debbie Abono. Now, I've known about Debbie Abono for a long time. People in the industry still talk about her, especially women in the industry, because she was one of the first people first female people in the scene who really put her money where their mouth was and really helped a lot of these guys develop into the great musicians that they were. And she's most notably known as the manager for Possessed. And you have to remember, Possessed was like this really crazy black metal, satanic, blood all over the place band. But she knew that they were just a bunch of good guys. Most notably out of Possessed, we know about Gary Lalonde and also Jeff Becerra, who still continues with Possessed despite being wheelchair bound in these days. You'll see them segue back into Metallica, and this time they're talking about Metallica at the Day on the Green event in August 1985. And I don't know if you guys can see on this side, there's the poster right there. I have the poster from Day on the Green. Those shots were from that event. And of course, there was a lot of big names on that show, people like Yngwie Malmsteen and the Scorpions. And really, though, the takeaway when they talk about the Day on the Green was that it kind of legitimized thrash metal, not only for the Bay, but for the entire country and the world. It told everyone out there, look, thrash metal is here, and here are the kings that represent our scene. Of course, that was Metallica, and they share a lot of cool stories about how James kind of thrashed and trashed the room, and how he had to go back there and make amends with the promoter and stuff like that. So great segment when they talk about Day on the Green, and that was it, man. That they had finally arrived, because with people like Kirk Hammett and Cliff, who were from the Bay. Okay, have to remember, these guys were from the Bay, and they grew up with Day on the Green every year, but there was never any heavy bands on there, much less a thrash band from a small thrash scene in the area. And now there they were representing. A lot of cool stuff. Now, guys, as I end out, I have to share with you, I wanted to share with you this, and many of you people out there, hopefully you don't ever forget the man, Cliff Burton, right here. He is always with me. I have tons of pictures of him and memorabilia of him in the Metalworks room. And it's surprising to me in some regards, because time heals wounds, but how people still think about Cliff Burton. I was telling my friend last night as we were watching and I was getting prepared for today's conversation that I remember the night Cliff Burton died. And that was September 26, 1986. So I was 15 years old. And of course, by that time I had been jamming Master of Puppets for a long time. And my mom, I told my friend, I said, I can't remember if it was early in the morning or late at night. I think it was late at night. And my mom, I was already asleep. My mom came and woke me up because she knew I was a Metallica freak. And she said, listen, turn on the radio, listen to what they're saying on the radio about Metallica. Somebody died. My mom didn't know who Cliff Burton was, but, I remember sitting there on my bed, and my mom sat down next to me, and we were listening to the news, and them saying that Cliff Burton had passed away in Sweden. And it was kind of mind-blowing. It was very weird, and I was very sad for a long time. I still get sad about it, because when you think about Cliff Burton, and if things had been different, if he had not passed away, what Metallica would have been, or how their sound would have stayed a little bit more true. But those are things that aren't worth talking about, because life is life, and it happens. Now, as we end at the end of the DVD, it's also cool, and they kind of end out how they started with Kirk Hammett. And I think one of the things that he shares that's so profound, and it's when you talk about someone like Kirk Hammett, a multi-millionaire, world-renowned guitar player, millions and millions of fans, for him to kind of reminisce about the Bay Area scene and how he was a part of it, and how unbeknownst to him that he was part of something very magical, something that would be historical, that it was the launching pad for his life, is a beautiful thing to see. And that takes a lot of humility. And the humility is expressed at the end when he actually starts tearing up as well. He's almost in tears, saying, how he was part of something that he never knew was going to be so grand. And it's a beautiful thing to see him so humble, despite all the gifts that he has in this world. I want to thank everybody for watching Metallic Musings number 4 and hearing all about my love for the book and the DVD called Murder in the Front Row. For some of you people out there who don't yet have them in your hands, be sure to look for them online. Get it and look at the history of thrash metal. Yes, it's not done yet. Metallica's going strong. Exodus is going strong. And I'm highly anticipating the brand new record from Megadeth. Yes, great to be part of that cloth. And all of my youngsters out there, I know you guys love thrash metal too. And all the subsequent bands that came out of that scene, many of them are still hitting it hard and delivering quality, great thrash metal to all of us. I look forward to 2022. I hope everybody out there, my Familia out there, will continue to stay tuned with us and support us. We're gonna give you some killer as interviews. I already announced that in January we're gonna have a Long Island band, Monochromatic Black here, yes. Then the band from Austin, Death of a Dream, and from Corpus Christi, All Life Dies. Gonna be a killer month for us. Those bands are delivering heaviness, Texas style, and we love it, man. We're gonna continue to give you the goods as 22 rolls on. So hopefully the world doesn't end and we can continue to thrash. Thank you, everybody. This is Rob for Metalworks. I'll see you guys again soon.